Thank you. Our speaker tonight is a research fellow and director of publications with PERC, which is the handle for Property and Environment Research Center. She is also a research fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. She has co-edited Accounting for Mother Nature, and most recently, she co-authored Greener Than Now, Are You Really an Environmentalist? She is primarily interested in the role of economic processes in shaping natural resource policy and in promoting market principles to a wide audience to help resolve environmental dilemmas. As part of this interest, she is expanding PERC reports into a full-fledged magazine that will serve as a leading voice of free market environmentalism. I almost forgot the main part of her bio is that she is married to Matt and they have 2 young children. And the 2 kids unanimously voted to let them come on their second honeymoon. Would you please give Laura Huggins a warm welcome?
Thank you so much, Mr. Sweeney, and the rest of the NASA crew. I guess actually that sounds like astronauts, huh? But, and especially thank you to Rick for inviting me here. I had the opportunity to meet Rick last year, and he has this wonderful way of saying really pessimistic things in an optimistic way. It's a rare talent. And what a pleasure it is to be able to actually give talk about the environment here in this setting, like Rick said. It's fantastic. Speaking of settings, I was out on the beach yesterday, and a couple of guys asked me if I was from Canada. And I think that's due to the whiteness of my legs, but I'm actually not from Canada, but I live just about 3 hours away from Canada in Montana. And this is, you can't really see it too well, but this is a picture from last week at Big Sky. I bring this photo in for 2 reasons. First, to say once again, I'm so happy to thaw out. And secondly, I just want you to see where I live. I chose to live here because I consider myself an environmentalist. I ski, I hike, I rock climb 2 days a week. You know, we take our kids camping. I started out as an environmental studies major, kind of going the typical course, member of the Sierra Club. At one point I had the 2 long braids and everything. No bandana though. And you know, the typical course of an environmentalist is to preach, lobby, sue, regulate. And that started to just feel wrong to me. And so I started reading authors like Ayn Rand, who I was very happy to see in my hotel room. Her books were the only 2 books available in the room. And Hayek and Friedman, and I started to think about the environment a little bit differently. And I think through clearer lenses instead of this sort of green haze that I was looking through. And that's why I get upset on every Earth Day. We've got 48 hours to go now. Listen to the media, and you're going to hear these sort of catastrophic claims about the Earth. I just heard one recently by the director of Avatar, Cameron, who said, you know, if we don't do something about global warming now, we're all going to effing die. And he's wrong, and I know he's wrong, because if you look back for 40 years, they've been wrong every single Earth Day, but they use the fear factor because it's a powerful tool. So let me go back in time here. We're going to start with the first Earth Day, and then we'll go forward. So just bear with me for a bit here. These are predictions from that first Earth Day in 1970. We have Barry Commoner. I don't know if you remember. He actually ran for president in the 80s. I think his platform was actually resource socialism. But here he says, we are in an environmental crisis which threatens the survival of the nation and of the world as a suitable place of human habitation. Of course, we're all still alive here today. And then we have Ken Watt, UC Davis. He's giving a talk at Swarthmore, I believe. He actually predicts that the Earth will be 11 degrees colder by 2000. We will be in an ice age. Of course, that didn't come true. And then we have a New York Times editorial talking about man must stop pollution, or we will face, a possible extinction. If you look at pollution in the United States, air quality has been improving dramatically for the past 40 years. I'm not making this up. You can go visit the Environmental Protection Agency website yourself. Water quality has been improving. We've been expanding the total amount of land under conservation, and our fisheries are now starting to improve. Let me go into depth on one more. My favorite prophet of gloom, Paul Ehrlich. I'm assuming some of you are familiar with him. He wrote The Population Bomb in 1968, and then a revised version where he fixed a lot of things in 1972. So let's just play Mythbusters for a minute. Are you all familiar with that show?
Yeah.
It's the only show my brother watches, so I have to watch it so that I can communicate with him, but they like to blow things up. So anyway, Paul Ehrlich, he predicts back in 1970 we will be more than 7 billion by 2000. We will have massive famines that will occur by 1980. So we can't exactly blow it up, but we can definitely defuse the bomb. By 2000, there were 6 billion people, nearly 30% fewer than he predicted. Let me get ahead to my notes. Average fertility rates have dropped dramatically from 6 children per woman in the 1960s to 2.8 today. Total fertility rates for 80 countries are below the replacement level of 2.1 children per woman. That's for 80 countries. The Bahamas, I believe, at 2.13. So you're barely replacing yourself, so you're doing okay. And if present trends were to continue from today, we'd actually peak at 2040 and then start to decline in population. You don't hear those statistics in Al Gore's work, but they're there on the United Nations website. So what about famine? Of course, we had the Green Revolution come along. World population doubled from 1960. It was at 3 billion. And then at 2000, it was up to 6 billion. At that same time, daily calorie consumption in poor countries increased by almost 40%. So where do all these people go wrong? It's hard for me to stand still, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to not trip myself and be calm. And why are they sometimes called neo-Malthusians? And to answer that question, we have to go back in time even further, about 200 years back. We have the lovely Reverend Thomas Malthus here. He argued that human population growth would run into constraints imposed by fixed natural resources. And he did some mathematic modeling. But the problem is he viewed humans like a herd of deer. And deer, when they run out of food, they do starve sometimes. But people, we actually have 2 hands and a brain, right? We don't act that way. So the question is really, are resources really finite? And it depends on how you look at it. And I suggest that Paul Ehrlich here on the left walk across Stanford campus and meet Paul Romer over at the Hoover Institution, where I spend some of my time. And Paul Romer is known for the new growth theory. And here's what he has to say about finite resources. Every generation has perceived the limits to growth that finite resources and undesirable side effects would pose if no new recipes or ideas were discovered. And every generation has underestimated the potential for finding new recipes and ideas. Our ultimate resource, in short, is our mind. Let's fast forward real quick here to the 1980s. On Earth Day, the theme was a new challenge for the new decade.